Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
It's time for Tuesdays with Neal. Sir, welcome.
As always, it is an extraordinary pleasure to be here. Hope you guys are doing well out there.
About to work out next week. This Tuesday is the 4th of July.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm like a week off because my boss is going to be gone like at the end of this week, so I got to do all his stuff leading into it. I feel like, man, I'm just putting it off. I feel like that isn't close yet, but I suppose I should probably start getting concerned about that.
It's okay. All right, so Hard Knocks. I know Shannon Furman. She is part of the crew that does this, and they do great work with it. What is the reluctance on the part of now, obviously, many teams about whether they want to be on Hard Knocks or not? Because I know Shannon and the crew, I mean, they're not sitting there trying to get anybody.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of different angles to this. My gut would be coaches and to whatever degree players don't want the cameras around because they don't want to get clowned. You know, they don't want to have that viral moment because, believe me, there are people that are watching the show specifically for that, for the sake of creating content. And I'm not totally clear on the rules, but obviously the players aren't getting direct cuts for their participation with the show. So there's ample marketing that is done off of them and moments that are in the show when they need to be, focused on what they're doing. From the coach's perspective, it's a distraction. There are other things there. It's something to take the players' minds off of the task at hand. At the same time, I would offer up that because of the rules that are in place, what it's really saying is you qualified for this. It's not really a good thing to be qualified for it. So call it a loser's badge, if you will. If you're on the show, that means that you failed to meet a bunch of standards that would otherwise say that you had, to some degree, a successful season the year before. Also, add in the fact that I don't think anybody would do well with their fan base, all of those things considered, to say they're excited about the opportunity to do it. I don't think that they want their fan base thinking that this is a good thing for them. They're better off coming off as, we don't want to do this. We won't know for certain. I am sure there are some factions within a team that don't mind it. I'm sure there are some players that see it as an opportunity. But to your point, you kind of alluded to this. If you watch it, especially now, they're focusing on, never will be's. A lot of these guys, the competitions that they're talking about are fringe roster spots. They're practice squad spots. We've gotten to know the international player on the last 4 teams on Hard Knocks. Those are guys that, if not for the extra space created for them, wouldn't be on the team at all. So they're not really putting the stars to a whole lot of work, and I think that's something that's been kind of weeded out in the last, 4 or 5 seasons of it. If I looked at a roster of it, I could probably tell you when it's started to slide away from it. But it's an entertaining show. It's a good show. It doesn't get you as in-depth a look as what's probably real. But at the same time, I get why coaches, general managers might not want the cameras around when they're trying to do stuff. I'm not entirely sure it's, it's pretty soft. They're not really going after stuff. I mean, it's been since James Harrison was actively, borderline assaulting the cameraman to get away from him that we've seen, kind of controversial types of stuff. It's pretty vanilla. It's not real edgy anymore. You're not really seeing that. And a lot of the guys that are in there, you love hearing about them, but the next time you hear about them is when they get cut, and then they might get signed somewhere else during the season by somebody else, and you're not thinking about them going into the next season. So it's not like this is real, incredibly high-end NFL talent sharing parts of themselves during that process.
Well, what's interesting is that Bill O'Brien, when the Texans were on it, well, Bill's up there talking and at practice discussing the way I always saw Bill talk and discuss, okay, when it came to situations like that. And then I remember I was talking to him. I said, hey, how do you think of what? He goes, Jonesy. He says, my mother saw the first one. She says, what are you talking like that for? Because the mom isn't in practice. So, but you're talking about the reason they focus on the stories you're talking about is those are the compelling stories as to whether somebody makes it or not. I already know Aaron Rodgers has made the team. I don't have to worry about that. Right? They're trying to come up with a story.
Yeah, telling the story of it, I think, and that's something I think that's changed with the production that HBO has put in charge of it. I can't disagree with that. You do need to have some type of conflict, some kind of drama there. And they've done a good job highlighting the human element, I think, a lot of it. If you really want to get to know the NFL, you have to see all of it, in my opinion, because we've discussed this many times. Within the NFLPA, the Players Union, you're looking at a massive delta of really any type of human qualification you can think of. There's the difference between the highest paid and the minimum is enormous. The age range is probably 18 years, something like that. Experience, obviously, is vastly different. You put all that, the microcosm of that within a team creates a huge, I don't know if imbalance is the right word. I don't want to suggest it's a negative thing, but there's a lot of different things that are going on. You're catching a lot of different people at different points of their lives. They're going after the undrafted rookies, which I don't think it's a coincidence. You're seeing more and more undrafted rookies making rosters coming out of training camp nowadays. You kind of see how they became who they were, at least, what the producers are selecting to put on the screen. And it does create that sense of, will they or won't they, the drama that comes with, making a roster. I think that is compelling. I do enjoy watching that. At the same time, though, I remember, you go back to the Cowboys year, which I feel was probably the most overly orchestrated of all of them. They did provide some good insight into Dak and he and Zeke Elliott's friendship. You got a little bit from Dak. He was injured, but you saw really just how competitive he was, how single-minded he was, and most of that was because he was trying to avoid all of it. You could see where that comes from, and it gave you some good insight into McCarthy's position. I took from it that Jerry Jones really is in charge of just about everything. So it kind of confirmed what everybody already knows. And you can get some good stuff almost in an unintentional way, and it really depends on, when the cameras are on. And to be honest with you, that's not all that much different than working camp as part of media. There are things that you might see but you can't really report on, and there are things that happen that that the team can't really control. So there's kind of this sense of chaos combined with, a good amount of story opportunity from an eclectic group of people who are all there mixed together in oppressive heat and combative conditions. It can make for some good storylines, and some have been better than others, but you always appreciate the production value that goes into it.
Well, I know they always appreciate whatever cooperation they get, because it does make the production for Shannon and her crew a lot easier. And the crew has been here for, that same crew has been here several times for their rookie, welcome, hey, rookie, welcome to the NFL. So, I've seen them around for that, to do that as part of the group. This is a time of year where this is about as slow as it gets. This is about the only time of the year the NFL does not dominate the cycle. Right now it's the NBA and Major League Baseball. How important is it for the NFL just to have a little time to breathe before they dominate again?
I think two parts to it. I think that if they had something they could do in June, they would.
Yeah. Yep.
That said, the people who might not agree with that are gone. They're on vacation. Their news doesn't break because people aren't doing it, because they are taking, really the last breath of quasi-free air before, their world becomes extremely narrow, extremely specific to the job that they have to do. And I'm really talking more about the front office. Players do it as well. Look around social media. You see them. This is when they take their trips. They're in Europe. They're in Brazil. You get the sense that usually because it's fans screaming about why they're not in the gym working out at that particular moment, which is always kind of fun to see. It's their one opportunity to say, look, all right, we've drawn up everything we're going to draw up. We can wait and make decisions on this for another time. Yes, there are still good players who are out in the market, and it's not that teams are completely asleep at the wheel. It's just more like, why bother signing them right now? We have camp in a month. There's nothing that's going to happen between now and then, except, and I don't mean this negatively, but except for them to get hurt. So do we want to be liable for this now, or at the very least get them into camp where they have a professional reason to have gotten hurt? We might be on the hook for it then, but it's better than them, breaking their ankle, falling off the sidewalk before they even step foot on the field. They're not going to make a move now. So now I think is not that it's necessarily, organized this way, but there seems to be very much an understanding that this is the time of the year everyone kind of shuts it down and moves away. That said, I think, humanistically, yeah, they probably need to do that. I think, too, it's a good time for fans to not be plugged in and to not kind of grasp at straws. We got over the draft hangover probably in May.
Right.
There's a lot of excitement that comes from that. It's fun to see them in minicamp. You see them in teams' practice jerseys and the helmet for the first time. There's some value to that. And then there kind of just comes a point where it's like, we can't really push the envelope here anymore. Let's just wait on it, because all of this stuff we'll notice come preseason that it's nonsense compared to the real football that's going on. And then come week 1, week 2, week 3, we'll see that the preseason was kind of nonsense compared to what everything is. So I think to make those to make those kind of tent poles increase in strength, you have to have a dead moment where everything just sort of resets. I think that's where it is. This is really more of an audience attention thing than anything else. So it coincides well with a time period in which they can all just kind of say, look, you know what, let's just take a couple weeks off, or whatever that happens to mean. We don't have anything specific going on here. We can deal with internal stuff. We can deal with long-reaching stuff. More so than we can about roster personnel, media-facing type of thing, and just kind of get ready for what it's going to be, which is total chaos come late July.
Something's going to happen on July 11th that has not happened in 4 years, and that is there's going to be a supplemental draft. The supplemental draft over the years, Bernie Kosar, Terrell Pryor, people like that. There's only one player in this thing, and that is Milton Wright, a wide receiver from Purdue, who was academically ineligible this past season. If you use a fourth-round selection in the supplemental draft to take him, you will then lose a fourth-round pick in the 2024 draft. That's how it works. He's the only guy in it. Do you think somebody will take a flyer on him?
Every year this comes up, and I have gotten so hypnotically obsessed with this answer. I'll be honest with you. I didn't even realize they didn't have a supplemental draft the last 4 years. I know that we talk about it
That's
every year.
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
Usually you bring up whoever the player is, and that's when you start looking into whoever the player is, because let's be honest, if a guy that's facing academic suspension didn't go pro, there's probably a reason. So you look at it from the perspective of this has to be a pretty high-level guy if you want to spend a future pick on him right now, because you're essentially trading for that player. And on top of that, you're improving the rest of your competition because that cuts a pick out of the round. Is he worth having on your team going into camp now? He has not been through mini camp. You don't know anything about him personally. You haven't, if he had not declared for the draft, you didn't meet with him. You didn't interview him. There has to be a compelling reason for you to want to go get him. Now, the question is this guy Josh Gordon? I don't think so. Because to be honest,
he was a supplemental draft pick.
I don't know who he is. Yeah, I would say no. Just flat bottom line, no.
I agree.
I know it has been granted, things might have changed within the Steelers organization, but it was, kind of silent standard operating procedure. They were never going to take anybody in the supplemental draft. I don't care who it is. Right. They were not going to take anybody. I'd expect that streak to continue now. It's fun coming up with kind of tongue-in-cheek content to surround the supplemental draft. Usually it's a look back at it, and there was a point in time in which when you had the break off with the USFL, and there was a lot of decisions to be made, and there was legitimate competition back and forth. The supplemental draft made a bit more sense than it probably does today. I see the value of it, but I almost feel like they're not able to shoehorn it in at a better time. But where it is, the placement of it almost seems to me more like the NFL really doesn't want to actively try to poach players from college.
That's right.
The supplemental draft happening after minicamp really just says you don't have a chance. You have to have a really strong reason to not go back to school, whatever that happens to be. But by and large, the team isn't going to waste a pick on a guy that gave up his college eligibility, and nobody else is going to waste a pick on anyway. He's an undrafted free agent then. Going back to what I said before, that's becoming a bigger and bigger thing. So a lot of these guys are still going to end up, he's probably at best a practice squad player as a rookie, or that's where he's going to get his start. Not a bad place to be anymore. So why spend the pick on him? There's a lot of guys you have in some way, shape, or form, at least one, if not two, other professional leagues that are going on. The Steelers have 5 guys going into camp that they signed from a minor league this past spring season. So there are a lot more opportunities. There aren't maybe as many roster positions as there are, but there are always a ton of injuries. I think there's value to going into the supplemental draft, but it's not the supplemental draft that matters. It's the fact that they are declaring their eligibility to go pro. He'll probably end up in camp somewhere if somebody doesn't take him. But I don't think a team is going to waste an asset on him this late into the whole process.
And to be honest with you, he's better off being a free agent anyway. He'll have more options. He'll have more options than being the 5th round supplemental pick of some team. I mean, to be honest.
At that point, salary wise, it's going to look good, but that salary doesn't matter unless you make the team.
Right.
Wouldn't you rather have the opportunity to choose the team that you can make as opposed to, a bad decision by somebody or whatever it is that's going to happen?
Right.
You may as well have control at that point. And that's it goes back to Vontaze Burfict in, 2012, I think it was. He went undrafted. First-round talent went undrafted. He had, I think he had 20 offers. He could have, chosen anywhere that he wanted to go. He picked the one that gave him the best opportunity to make the team and to play. And he started as a rookie. Just kind of a bizarre situation all around. But I think that's a model of how players can look at it and say, if I'm not going to get drafted, Neal Coolong was the same way. If I'm not going to get drafted in round 1, don't draft me at all. I want to pick where I'm going to go, and then we can negotiate a contract from there. It makes more sense. That might be optimistic. You need a little bit more scratch. Not everyone's Neal Coolong in the situation that he faced. But you can see why it might make more sense for a player to enter the supplemental draft, even if it isn't the draft itself that's important. It's the fact that you are declaring yourself a free agent in the NFL pool.
It'll be July 11th. We will have no coverage of it. All right, but enjoy your holiday weekend, sir.
I will. You guys as well. Be safe. Be good. We'll get back to it after it.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, guys.